Namaskar, hello and a very warm welcome viewers. You're watching the special presentation of Sansad TV, Samvaad with your host Kriti. And on today's show, we have a very special guest, Civil Aviation and Steel Minister, Mr. Jyotiraditya M. So welcome to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us.
Having me.
So today, let me limit my questions to Civil Aviation Ministry. And let's begin talking about Digiyatra that you recently launched for 3 airports. That of course is meant for providing seamless processing of passengers. But sir, I was reading a few articles. A lot of them raise concerns on the privacy aspect of it. How do you allay those concerns?
Very good question, Kirti. So let me tell you first of all that what Digiyatra is doing is going to transform the experience for our customers. Using FRT, facial recognition technology, we are going to make the experience from when you enter the airport till when you board the aircraft both a seamless and a contactless process. And what I mean by that today is as opposed to 3 or 4 points of call where your identity is checked, your boarding pass is checked, through FRT you will gain a contactless process all the way till when you board. There certainly was concerns with regard to privacy, not only privacy but confidentiality.
That's true.
And on both counts, what we had started with first was that we would be centralizing your data and your information on a server. Once that decision was taken, these concerns were raised. And understanding that, we decided not to go with a centralized aggregated system, but a decentralized and a disaggregated system. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, to make it simple for our viewers, what we have decided to do is that you will download a app on your phone called Digi app and Digi Locker. Based on that, you will then raise and put in place your Aadhaar details onto that app. You will then take a recent photograph of yours, which will be then matched with your Aadhaar details, and that's it. 24 hours before you travel, you will upload that information on a blockchain system with the airport, only the airport that you're traveling with. When you reach the airport, the airport server will have your information residing in it immediately. When your photograph is taken, that photograph at that entry point will then be matched with this information, and the doors will immediately open and you'll pass seamlessly through till you board. Once you have boarded and once you have completed your journey, within a period of 24 hours, all the information that you have uploaded only onto that airport will be completely purged. And that takes care of all the issues with regard to confidentiality as well as with regard to privacy.
So all those concerns are assuaged that our data is of course safe. So talking about another aspect, the consolidation in this sector. After years of cutthroat competition, we saw the merger of former Air India, the national carrier, and Vistara. So how do you view the impact of this consolidation on the overall sector, on the civil aviation space?
I think it's a very positive sign, and the very fact that you will have a aggregated carrier, if you will, that looks at the merger on the one hand between Air India and Vistara, and on the other hand between Air Asia and Air India Express. And you will have a single airline that will offer a bouquet to our customer, both on the FCC side, which is the full cost carrier, which will be Air India plus Vistara, and on the ULCC side, the ultra low cost carrier, which will be the combination of Air Asia and Air India Express. And I think that the value proposition will only be enhanced through this combination of an offering for our customers. You are probably reading the papers as well as I am of their fleet expansion plans.
Yes.
And the very fact that what gives me a degree of confidence that along with the narrow-bodied aircraft that they're acquiring, which are the Boeings and the Airbuses 320s as well as the Boeing 737s. They have a very aggressive plan on wide-bodied aircraft as well,
Yes.
with the Boeing 777s that they're acquiring. Now that to me is a sign of a resurgence for us, because what is important for me as Civil Aviation Minister is for our carriers to be able to carry our Indian flag across the 7 seas. And India must endeavor to create herself a hub within India for our domestic and international travelers, as opposed to our current international hub being in our neighboring countries. So I need to ensure that we are able to recreate that hub within India. And I think that both the combination of Air India as well as all our other carriers that are slowly moving towards the wide-bodied market and the long-haul market is a very, very encouraging sign to be able to achieve that objective.
Absolutely, sir. Point well taken. Let me focus on the concerns of the passengers now.
Sure.
Sir, I buy all those arguments that supply chain disruptions, high jet fuel prices, demand, but sir, the airfare, they're absolutely off the roof. So many of us, many of the air travelers want the price capping back. Do I get some commitment from the Civil Aviation Minister?
So, first Kriti, let me just take you back in time.
Yes, sir.
If you look at how our industry has evolved, and let me give you the analogy of what you and I can, or for that matter, any citizen in our country can no longer live without, which is this box.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Agree.
Unfortunately, I will say, because I think rather than that box becoming our slave, we become a slave to the box.
True.
In 1993, when I returned from university and I took on my first job as a banker, fortunately till then we did not have this box in India, right?
Yes.
And you see, when this box entered, as a mobile phone entered our lexicon and our lives, initially it was a product that was priced out of our reach. Each one of these instruments costed roughly about a lakh of rupees. You used to pay 16 rupees a minute to be able to use them. And as you saw economies of scale come in, and the oft repeated concept in economics of low margin, high volume, low margin versus low volume, high margin, that transformed the sector as well.
That's
Today, you can get a mobile phone or a handset for 3,500 rupees, and voice today is free. A similar transformation, if you will, has taken place in the area of civil aviation. In the mid-90s, when you or I would have to travel, forget about tertiary cities, but even within metros, you would be paying upwards of 30,000, 40,000 rupees per ticket. That no longer is the case.
Yeah.
Why? Because if I don't take you way back to the 90s, but let's say in 2013-14, when Prime Minister took over government, we had 74 airports in our country.
Right.
Over the last 8 years, we have built out close to about an additional 71 airports, waterdromes and heliports. That means we've doubled our capacity almost from 74 to 145. It took our country 70 years to build 74 airports, and we built 71 airports, waterdromes and heliports in a period of 8 years. That's the transformation that's taken place. Right. Similarly, if you look at the fleet size, in 2013-14 we had 400 aircraft in our fleet. Today we have close to 700, and we are going to grow, going back to your earlier question, between all our carriers, whether it's Indigo, SpiceJet, Air India, Akasa, other carriers hopefully that will come in. We are going to grow at roughly between 75 to 100 planes on an annual basis. So when you are going to see that volume come in, couple that with the fact that pre-COVID we had touched a high of 4,07,000 passengers per day.
Yes.
Yesterday we have broken that ceiling. Yesterday we had 4,13,000 people travel in our country, right? So you're looking at a robust demand as well as supply increasing both on infrastructure and carriers. Both together will, I'm sure, provide a value proposition for both sectors to be able to evolve a robust market. Today our fares are nowhere close to where they used to be in the mid-90s.
That's right.
They're a fraction of that, if you will. But certainly there are structural issues, pricing issues that do play their part. Now, let me explain what I mean by structural or pricing issues. Our sector is a seasonal sector. So, you have a lean season in monsoon, let's say starting in late May, early June, all the way till early October. And then once the festive season kicks in, you see a hockey stick transformation in demand, which is what we are going through currently. And therefore, seasonal variations also have their effect on prices, because when there is no pressure on the number of seats, then the pricing obviously goes down. But when there's immense pressure on seats, and you know the ticket pricing is done on a bucket basis, then the pricing also does go up. The second factor that is playing its part is that in 2019-20, air turbine fuel, which constitutes close to 50% of the cost structure of an airline, okay, was priced at roughly 53,000 rupees a kiloliter. That ATF today is priced at 1,17,000 rupees a kiloliter. So, if 50% of a enterprise's cost structure has doubled, that is going to have an effect on pricing. But let me tell you that the multiplier effect on pricing has not happened, because there's only so much that a market can absorb in terms of increase in pricing. So, even though ATF has gone up 2 times, pricing has not gone up twice, but it certainly does have its effect on pricing.
Right.
Which is why I have taken over the last year, our ministry has worked tremendously with our state governments to at least reduce the effect of VAT on ATF pricing. And let me give you the data on that. In July 2021, we had 12 states that priced VAT on ATF between 1 to 4%, and we had 26 states that priced VAT on ATF between 20 to 30%. So, assume a two times delta on ATF pricing plus a 20-30% hammer on that, 2x pricing with respect to VAT. Within the last year and a half, with huge persuasion, literally pleading with state governments how if you lower VAT, you will incur the economic rationale of the Laffer curve, where if you lower taxes, you will have higher revenues through greater refueling, you will have greater economic activity by greater connectivity coming into your state. And I must, through you, put on record and through you thank all the state governments that have moved from a 20-30% VAT regime to a 1 to 4%. And we've had 16 states that have moved from that basket of 20 to 30% VAT regime to a 1 to 4%. So, in July 2021, we had 12 states in a lower basket and 26 states in a higher basket. Today, we have, with 16 moving over, 28 states in the lower basket of 1 to 4%, and only 8 remaining states in the higher basket of 20 to 30%. And through you, I'd like to implore and plead with the balance 8 governments, kindly come on board on this side, so that you can also experience what civil aviation brings to your economy, as well as higher revenues in the years to come.
Well, I just cannot dispute that economic theorem that you've given me, sir. But, sir, from January, extra levy on the airlines for the regional connectivity, that may also push prices.
Well, what you have to understand is, at the end of the day, what is it that we want? Would you like civil aviation to be limited only to metros?
Not at all.
Would you like civil aviation only to be limited to a few that are traveling? Or would we want all of India to be part of this exercise?
But, sir, I wouldn't want to pay exorbitant prices as well.
So, let me finish. If it is the latter that we want, which is all of India to be part of this initiative, which is very much the Prime Minister's sankalp and his vision, which is why he inspired the Udan Yojana, which is Ude Desh Ki Aam Nagrik. And the real democratization of civil aviation has taken place in the last 8 years of Narendra Modi ji's government. And that has seen a huge transformation, as you yourself have experienced.
Agree.
Earlier, towns and smaller cities that were way off the civil aviation map. Let me cite some examples for you, whether it is Darbhanga, whether it is the only city on the western coast of Orissa, Jharsuguda, whether it is Rupsi in Assam, whether it is Kishangarh in Rajasthan, which is houses Dargah Sahib of Ajmer, and a huge marble trading manufacturing community. Many examples such as these would never have crystallized. So therefore, the RCS levy that is at 5,000 going to 10,000 will then aid many more Udan Yojanas taking off, both for tertiary cities and connectivity to unserved or underserved markets. And let me give you the data. In the last 6 years that Udan has been in place, we have flown close to 1.1 crore passengers, many of whom would have seen a plane above their head, but never have been able to travel on those planes. We have flown close to about 2,15,000 flights. And the Udan Yojana, as an offshoot, which many people have not noted, has given birth to close to 11 new airlines on a regional basis, which is something that is not talked about. So there have been many dividends of the Udan Yojana, which will contribute to the national task of development.
So before I talk about manufacturing, I'll quickly focus on safety. So we saw a spate of incidents, smoke in the flight cabin, we saw emergency landings. Do you think that perhaps you need to tighten oversight?
Well, let me say this, that the primary responsibility of safety in terms of conducting processes lies with the airlines. Our regulator, our safety regulator, which is DGCA, has been on top of things, has been making sure that processes are followed. And let me give you an example of that. In 2021 calendar year, DGCA on an annual basis has something called an annual surveillance plan, based on which it checks engineering, it checks processing, it checks all of that. We had planned close to about 2,700 checks through the annual surveillance plan. For calendar year 22-23, which is going on now, calendar year 22, we have increased that 2,700 number to close to 3,742. So there has been almost a 50% increase in the annual surveillance plan. If you take the calendar year number of 3,742 and you prorata it, we've just finished the month of November. So let's say 8 months out of the 8 or 10 months out of the 12 months. It would work out to a number close to about roughly about 2,800 or so. As on date, November 30th, we have completed 4,219 checks across all parameters. In the last 6 months, DGCA has put in place a full oversight across all airlines. The engineering staff that do the engineering checks on aircrafts at all airports, which were initially type A AMEs, has been changed to B1, B2 type, which is a much higher level. The camo audits and the ammo audits have been increased across all airlines. With regard to safety, all the safety officers across all airlines have been given a protocol that needs to be followed. So DGCA, I believe, is doing its job of making sure that on a safety wavelength, airlines are practicing exactly the protocol that needs to be in place.
Some manufacturing. Now we saw the Airbus unit in Vadodara. We also have the PLI scheme for drones in place now. So how do you further plan to push manufacturing, because that has the multiplying impact?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Kirti. And I think that manufacturing has tremendous potential in our country. But for that, in any country, civil aviation needed to achieve scale. We have now achieved scale in India. And I think the time is ripe to put in place and concentrate not only on airlines and airports, but to concentrate on the full ecosystem of civil aviation. And that civil aviation ecosystem entails FTOs, flying training organizations, entails helicopters, entails ground handling, entails MRO, entails manufacturing. And as far as manufacturing is concerned, I think, again, Prime Minister's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, make in India, but make for the world. I think that transformation has happened over the last 8 years. The very fact that today Boeing, along with Tata and other companies, have multiple facilities in India, export goods over $1 billion made in India. Airbus exports goods worth roughly about $650 million from India. One of the largest MRO majors, Safran, is putting in place a $150 million facility in India for their CFM LEAP engines. Along with that, this facility in Vadodara will really be a quantum leap forward. It is for the first time in history that Airbus is actually putting up a facility in India, the C295 facility for transport aircraft, replacing our aged old Avro fleet, 56 aircraft, almost 23,000 crores in terms of investment. 16 of them will be brought in fully built from their Spanish facility, but the balance 40 will be made in India. Now, what does that entail? That entails close to about 13,000 parts being made domestically.
Right.
That entails 4,600 sub-assemblies being made domestically.
Right.
That entails companies like Bharat Dynamics and Bharat Electronics building the electronic warfare systems that will go into these aircraft indigenously. What that entails is close to about 5,500 jobs domestically. What that entails is close to about 300 of our engineers being taken to the Spanish facility and being trained there and brought back. So think of exactly the point that you made in your question, the multiplier effects that this will have across not only the ecosystem of civil aviation, but across the value chain, across multiple industries. Because do not forget that it is the area of space and the area of civil aviation that is on the cutting edge in terms of new technology. And from applications in space and on aviation follows the adoption of those technologies into multiple areas. A case in point for you is automobiles.
Yeah.
Today, many of us have head-up displays that are put up in cars. Where have those HUDs come from? They've come from space technology and fighter technology and airplane technology, which have now been adapted to automobile technology. So the spin-offs of that will be great for India in the days to come.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for this candid conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks a lot, sir. Well, viewers, that's all I had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.